Well, how's it going, everybody? This is True Lies Podcast, Truth About Crappie Fishing. This is Brad Thomas, and we got Cliff Bomas with us. How are you doing, Cliff?
Doing pretty good tonight.
Good, good. So, I heard you got second place at the Ouachita River at the National Crappie League. Is that true?
Yeah, yes, sir, it is. Had a pretty good time down there.
Yeah, and you also got big fish, right?
That's correct. Got lucky and got a good one and held on for the weekend.
Absolutely. You got to cash some checks, right?
Yes, sir. Second, pl- second place, big fish, and first place, male female division.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're going to talk about shallow water, live scoping shallow water. A lot of people hate it. And with the spawn going on, just figure we give some tips and tricks from Cliff and go from there. But, please subscribe and like our page. Definitely, you can listen to us on our podcast anywhere that offers podcasts. You can check us out on YouTube. And let's get after it, Cliff. Can you kind of give our listeners your breakdown of what equipment you have on your boat currently?
Yeah, I run a 32 transducer with my Livescope, and I'm running a 8412 Garmin for the graph. To me, I like the smaller instead of going bigger because you have more pixels per inch, and to me, it gives me a clearer picture for picking the fish off the bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. And you used to have a 10-inch, right?
Yes, I still have it up there. I use it for my waypoints and mapping.
Gotcha. And what kind of settings do you have for your live scope in shallow water?
I like to run them hot when I get shallow. So I'm running, color gain up in the 80s, anywhere from 79 to 85. And then my gain, I'm going to run it from anywhere from 70 to 90. Depends on it. If there's pollen in the water. If you get pollen in the water, you got to lower it down or you can't see nothing. You got to take your color gain down or it just blinds you. You just got to play every lake, different times of the day. Normally you get your color gain set, you're pretty good, but you got to mess with your gain through the day as the sun comes up, goes down, whether you're in a little dirtier water, whether you got a little pollen in the water. That
Yeah,
helps a lot.
yeah, absolutely. And that probably tells me that you need to mess with it, depending on the time of day, if the sun's out, if it's cloudy. And, I noticed you say hot. So can you kind of explain what hot means so our listeners kind of
Yeah.
understand what you're
Um,
saying?
a lot of people like a really clear screen, no clutter, no nothing, so they can see that independent fish easier. I run mine hotter. It's real grainy and gritty looking. But what I gain with that is when that fish gets in within about 30 feet, I can tell where the head is. I can tell where the tail is. There's no question. And that's why I run it hotter. It gives me a better pinpoint and it helps me to determine what kind of fish I'm coming at faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of helps you too when you're trying to put that bait right on his head, right?
Yeah, because a lot of these high pressure lakes, if you set it on his tail and move it to his head, he's going to take off. So
Absolutely.
you got one opportunity to set it in the right spot, and if you don't do that, you're not going to catch that fish.
Yeah, and I mean tournament day, that could hurt you big time, right?
Oh yeah, it costs you a lot of money in a hurry.
Absolutely. Especially with the fishermen are out on the trail right now, that is for sure.
Yeah, it's
Um,
tough everywhere.
yeah. Yeah, so can you tell our listeners what kind of color palette you use on your screen? Do you use like emerald green or what do you use?
I've used amber ever since Livescope come out, and that's just something I can really tell what fish are. I have trouble in certain lightings with humidity. I have trouble seeing that. So what I'll do is go. I down on Grenada when I was fishing shallow, I was having trouble, so I went to Caribbean, which give me like a green and a blue color. And I was
Mm.
really able to pick the fish off the bottom. Most of my fish on day two down there were all sitting on the bottom in 2 to 3 foot of water. They wasn't active, they wasn't moving, but when you set a jig on them, they'd eat it.
Now, you say you're picking them up off the bottom. When you're in, let's say, Caribbean, is it like lighter on top? I mean, because it's tough to find a fish that's sitting in the mud And I think with the hot settings that you have, you could probably see them a little bit better in the mud. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I played a lot with my color gain when I realized there was no trash fish up in that shallow water. The only fish that were in there were crappie. So what I started doing, shooting out 50 foot, I jacked all my gains up high, and I mean, they was glowing like the sun out there, sitting on the bottom, and I could just pick them out so easy. I could fly through there, pick them out, stop. The wind was blowing, so I'd drop power poles and set 5 foot from them and catch them.
Absolutely.
They really wasn't spooky. It was just one of them odd days.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. That's why you got to play with your live scope and your settings and see what's best for you and see what's best for that time, right, or that body of water. Or but definitely got to play with it for sure.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of time on the water, correct?
Yeah, experience is a lot. I mean, it took me a good year and a half, 2 years. I mean, a lot of these younger kids are catching on a lot faster. Some of us older guys, I mean, it took me a year and a half, 2 years to really start getting it dialed in. But every time I go fishing, I learn something new.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're not learning something new, you're not doing something correct.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, every lake you go to, day to day, it looks different. I mean, you can go in there one day and say, "Man, I got them found." Go there the next day, the tournament pull in, there's nothing. So, I mean, when that happens, you just put your head down and go. I mean, they're somewhere. You just have to find them.
Yeah, you just got to find them. Absolutely. You were talking about a little about your color gain and stuff like that. When you're in, let's say, 5 feet of water, what is your, are you looking out 50 feet? Is your depth, let's say 10, 15 feet all the time, or how do you do that?
Generally, if I'm over 5 foot deep, I run my depth at 15 foot. That's where I like it. I can tell how big the fish are. I mean, I can see them at 45, 50 foot and tell how big they are.
Gotcha.
When I get shallow, I like to see a little bit more of the screen, so I'll kick it down to 10 foot.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's an adaptation, because when you see a fish, he looks like a 4 pounder, but he's really a 1 pounder. So you really have to get a quick learn. When you turn that down to 10 from 15, then fish double in size.
Yeah,
And
it
that,
pretty much zooms it in, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. It's like auto zoom, and you're like, oh wow, there's a giant, and you catch it, and you're like, wow, what happened here? And then you realize it's got to look really big.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you leave the squares on at all?
Yes, I do leave the squares on, and I do that to judge size of the fish as they start coming in a little bit closer.
Now, you say when you're judging fish, let's say you're in your normal settings, what are you looking for? Is that fish got to be as big as that square or bigger than that square? I mean, what are you looking for there?
Depends on the lake you're in. I mean, some lakes you're going to catch a pound and a quarter fish, and that's going to be a half a square.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you're out like mine at 45 foot, I've got a 2 foot long square. So if I'm seeing the fish at 50, 55, and I'm zooming it in, as soon as they hit 45 foot, I know how big that fish is.
I gotcha. Yeah, and like I said, that's going to be experience on the water, correct?
Yes, because I mean, sometimes you think you got a bigger fish, and when it starts getting smaller, the closer it gets, it's really smaller.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, in your opinion, what transducer is better than is it the 32 or the 34? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I know you run the 32.
Yeah, I mean, I run the 32 all the time. I'd like to get a 34 to play with, but I mean, I work for a living, so I have to appropriate my money where I need it the best. So, I've had good luck with 32. A lot of guys don't like the 34 for roaming fish, and I've taken a few guys out in their boats and set them up on their electronics and helped them out a little bit. In the 34s, I really had trouble seeing suspended fish. And I don't know whether I didn't have the settings right for the 34 or what was going on. But like, for instance, I had a guy that had a pole with a 32 on it, and he's sitting there telling me where there's a fish, and I can't find it with 34. I mean, I know there's been some updates on them, so I think your 34s are a little better than what they were when they very first came out. So I think it'll get a lot better. And I want to buy one and get it on and play with it and see how it works. But as far as having one for 6 months and playing with it, I couldn't tell you how they compare.
Yep. So when it comes to the 32, 34, I'd say a lot of people out there got the 32. I know I have the 32, and I've never missed with the 34. I've seen it. I've been in a boat that has the 34. Seems like it's got a smaller cone, and I just kind of want what I'm used to. That way, I don't really have to change and have to learn all the time because I just don't have the time to get on the lake to really put the time in to get that in
Yeah,
there. So I think a lot of people are staying with the 32. But
yeah.
they say the
There's
34 works. Don't they say the 34 works really well with like the 8600s? Or you think that's
it
true or
does,
not?
and if you're only fishing timber or brush piles, that's what it's for. It's giving you target separation. And
Yeah.
that's everybody that's got it that I know. They said it works. You can see the fish so much easier sitting on a tree than you can with 32. So it's something I'd like to have one and get used to it because a tighter cone would be really nice if that's really the difference. And I think that's what I've heard with some of these newer versions coming out.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we're just gonna have to see how that happens, and maybe in the future we'll get somebody that seems pretty efficient with the 34, and we'll ask them, right?
Yeah,
So
there's some guys that are using them that are pretty darn good with them. So I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure it's getting confidence in something. Is
yeah,
99% of it.
yeah, absolutely. You know, I know you don't like to fish shallow. I know you don't. There's a lot of people that don't. But when do you fish shallow? Is it only during the spawn, or I mean, what's your opinion on that?
No, I catch a lot of my late summer fish in less than 5 foot of water. That's where the big shad schools go, and that's
Hmm.
where your big crappie are going to go. They're going to go where the food source goes. So when you start
Yeah,
getting them cooler nights and them shad are going shallow, guess where them big crappie are going?
absolutely, definitely chasing the food for sure.
Definitely.
You know, let's talk a little bit about tournament fishing. When you're doing your homework, let's say you're looking at maps or you're out pre-fishing, where do you fish where the shallow water is? I mean, what are you looking for?
Um, if I'm pulling into an arm, I see a creek channel come off a bank, and then you see a flat that's right there. That's going to key me back in during the spawn. That's where them fish are going to spawn at. So
Yeah.
that's what you want to go look for. Or you've got spawning flats with ditches that run through them, with flats with trees and stumps all over them. 3, 5 foot of water. That's where them fish are going to go spawn.
Yeah, and you see that a lot in Kansas, and I would say you see that a lot in Truman too. I mean, do you agree with me on that?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, because Kansas has got a lot of ditches that I mean, it's you got to really study to know where they're at.
Yeah, and
And
a lot of your fish will pull back out of them creeks. They really don't like that main lake a lot. So
yeah,
they try to get back in the coves arms, but they get right up on them flats and depending on the clarity, whether it's 5 foot of water or 2 foot of water.
yeah. You know, here's another thing. When you're tournament fishing, or let's say you're pleasure fishing, when the fish aren't biting in that area, when do you make that decision to move to another spot? I mean, what goes through your mind, and kind of tell our listeners, what your thought process is on that? Because there's a lot of fishermen out there that just sit on one spot and don't move, and they'll tell you, oh, they'll come back. Well, I don't really believe in that, but I mean, what's your opinion on it?
A lot of it's not that they come back; they come off the bottom.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you take that dead part of the day, you don't see nothing, and that's where it can hurt you or it can help you. If you know the fish are in an area and you can't find them anywhere, you definitely want to come back to it, but you can only give it, a couple, 3 hours in a tournament because you're limited to an 8 hour tournament and you got to go find fish. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to go find something. But, I have bad tendencies. I'll come back to it multiple times through the day where I know there's good fish. And
Yeah.
normally, eventually, you'll come through there and pick up 2 or 3 of them. I think what the biggest thing is they come off the bottom
Yeah.
and make it where you can see them.
Why do you think that is? Why is that? Why are these crappies staying on the bottom? Are they trying to stay away from the predator fish? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know whether it's boat pressure that pushes them down there, whether it's barometric pressure. I actually think a lot of them just live on the bottom.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is catching them when they come up on a tree or come up on and they just float, and then that's where we're coming across them.
Okay.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
That I
You
wish
think?
I had that answer because I'd
I
do a
know,
lot better in
right?
tournaments if I knew.
I know, right? I mean, me too. I always thought it's, especially in like summer days when the water's hot, I always figure I do see a lot more on the bottom.
Yeah.
And to me, that's telling me, hey, they want to get down in that cooler mud, right? So that's my only thought process. But that's only during the summer. But I see that
I mean, they could,
year round.
but they could be down there eating bugs. They could be
Yeah,
down. I mean, there's got to be a reason they're down there.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's probably another question I need to ask. Get a fish biologist on here and ask him. Maybe he knows.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me know the answer on that one.
Yeah. I don't think I'll ever get one, but that's okay. At least I had to try. You know, you own Pro Tough Baits, so I kind of want to know what's your go-to color in shallow water. I know when the fish are in the mud or in the brush, kind of walk through or show us or explain to us what it looks like and what you think the best thing is for, every situation you can think of just to help us out.
I mean, normally in the spring of the year when the fish are shallow, I'm going to use, a Cajun cricket, an orange and chartreuse, or a black and chartreuse, or a purple and chartreuse. Dirtier water, I'll go to a white and chartreuse. Them are the colors that I'm going to dominantly use in shallow water.
Okay.
But I'll use the same ones out as it gets deeper too.
Okay. And I mean, why, some guys are colors, some guys like natural colors. How do you
Now,
think color really makes a difference?
I think it does. And the neat part about Livescope, you can see how the fish react to it.
Hmm.
It's not that I've seen times where I've got 20 colors laying on the deck because I'm just trying to find that color that them fish want to react to, whether it's a crawfish color that they're eating at that time, if there's a crawfish hatch or shad hatch or a minnow hatch. I mean, we don't know setting up in the boat looking
Yeah.
what they're triggering on to feed on. And once you find a color they're eating good, I mean, don't change it until they
Yeah.
quit eating it. But
Absolutely.
like this time of year, we're starting to get some shad hatch, so I'm going to go all natural through this part of the rest of the year probably.
Yeah, and I mean when you talk natural, you're probably talking what? Silver,
Silver,
dark,
monkey milks,
yeah, monkey milk, stuff like
maybe,
that.
yeah, maybe some dark greens, some stuff like that. Just some natural colors.
Yeah. And what kind of profiles are you going to use?
Like
Like are you like two and
like
a half inch or 2 inch or
when the shad first hatch, I'm dropping down inch and a half, inch and three quarter. I mean,
gotcha.
you want to match what they're eating. So if you can get as close to that as you can get, you're going to have really good luck. And
So so that tells me, sorry to cut you off, but that tells me so you start out early year, you want to start out a
er,
smaller bait.
well, early in the year on the spawn, I like bigger baits because
Okay.
the shad are 4 or 5 inches long that them fish are chasing and eating.
Gotcha.
So bigger baits are look a little more attractive to them in the spring. But then once you have the shad hatch, which happens, right there about the time they get done spawning, about the time the
Yeah.
crappie get done spawning, you get a shad hatch, and then they're chasing them little inch and a half shad swimming around.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
the rest of the year I'm going to use inch and a half to 2 inch baits.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that seems what everybody really uses throughout the year, except during the spawn, and
Yep.
maybe when that water's like chocolate milk. I've heard that you might want to go to a bigger profile also.
Oh,
And
I mean, grenade, I was down there catching them on an inch and a half bait, and I could see the bait go down 2 inches. So
really, really,
yeah, I mean, and I could swing it by them, and they would turn on it, even in that dirty of water. So I mean, they know it's coming by them.
absolutely. Another good question that I actually just thought of is because this happens to me all the time. I'm sitting there looking at a fish. I drop on him. He doesn't bite it. And I could sit there and sit there and sit there. He won't even move. And then I'll try to pitch to him, let it flow over the top of him. He might, look at it, like turn and look at it, but he doesn't bite it. And then you try different colors, you try everything, same deal, right? What do? Do you just move on and try to find another fish because he's not biting, or
Yeah, depending on
what's your thoughts on that?
depending on if I need a big fish and I got a big fish that's not wanting to bite, I'll give him 15, 20 minutes, try to get him to eat something. I might even back off that fish for a ways, let him kind of relax a little bit, and
Yeah,
come back up on him and see if I can get him excited. You know, if it's early in the day, you know, and I can't get him, I'm going to mess less than 5 minutes and I'm moving on.
I got you.
So, but if it's a giant and I think it'd really do me a lot of good, I'm going to spend,
Yeah.
I mean, I spent over almost 30 minutes in Grenada on one fish.
Wow. And you know, Grenada, you have to chase them, right? So I
These
mean,
wasn't chasing, so it was kind of comical. They just laid there on the bottom.
really,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, but normally you got to chase them at Grenada, and you know how fast do you think you go when you're chasing fish? Are you going 1.5, 2 miles an hour? I mean,
Normally a mile an hour to a mile and a half, right in there. You know, I
yeah,
mean 1.5 normally maximum speed chasing a fish.
yeah. Now, is that? Do you also see that in 5 foot of water? Is that just in up in open water? Let's say.
I mean that's all depths. I mean if you're chasing open fish, and if you can drop on them, get them to eat it the first time you see them, you might get lucky and not have to chase them. Grenada, them fish swim. I mean, so if you can't get it on him at first, you might as well just pull your paddles up and take off after him. Chase is
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
And I mean,
Chases on.
but I mean, 100. I mean, I've chased them 150 yards down there and caught 3 pounders. You know, put the effort in and go get them.
Absolutely. Yeah, Grenada's a different animal for sure.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, I mean, we have to do that in Iowa, Red Rock Lake. You have to chase them sometimes, and it's interesting, you know. And we say search and destroy, and man, we'll be up to 2 miles an hour. It's like holy crap, come on, stop! And then all of a sudden they will stop, and then if you
Yeah.
don't have brakes or paddle, I mean, you'll go right over the top of them, and
Yep.
you're like, dang it. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I mean, all lakes are different. So, you know, and can you kind of tell us why you went from a 10 to a 12? I mean, you
I
say that a smaller picture, you know, a smaller screen gets better pixels. And
I did it just so I could see a little bit more of it.
yeah,
I mean, I was real happy with my 10, but I got a crack in it. My mount broke, and I come over and hit my butt seat, got a crack down one side, and
yeah,
that's really the only reason I upgraded.
I got you.
You know, because
So,
I really like the picture on the 10, but I was like, you know, I want something just a little bigger. I mean, I'm not getting younger every year, so my eyes are getting a little worse. So you know, a little bigger, I can see it a little better.
yeah, pretty soon, Cliff, you're going to have bifocals underneath here. You'll be looking at the screen like this, you know.
Oh, they told me I needed them, and I said no, I don't.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, yeah, it sucks getting old for sure. So, well, I mean, do you have anything you want to add or anything? Did we miss anything that you think?
I mean, the biggest thing people need to do with Livescope is not get frustrated with it, you
Hmm.
know, and it takes time in the seat. You know, going out and sitting on a brush pile watching the fish swim up and hit it. A lot of people do that and they're happy with that because they see the fish come and hit it. But if they really want to get to another level, they're going to have to go chase individual fish.
Hmm.
And, you know, and that's where they'll learn a lot more about their electronics, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, you got to put your butt in a seat and put the time in.
Yeah.
You know,
And seeing the fish and getting it on your live scope, that's 10% of it. Boat control is 90%. Because if you don't have boat control, you're not going to get the jig on them and you're going to go home frustrated. So, I mean,
absolutely.
the boat control is what you get better at with live scope
Hmm.
because you have to learn how. And there's a few guys that are winning all these tournaments, they got to figure it out.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I seen Hayden Jeffries fish. I was actually fishing close to him one time in a tournament last year, and I was just in awe because his boat control is just unreal.
Yeah.
And he all he had, so he had those Raptors, but he also had these trolling motors on the back.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I said, I've never seen that before. That was before crappie breaks, all that stuff. And I go, I'm gonna do that. So that's the first thing I did when I got back was put trolling motors on the back
Yeah.
because you got to have boat control. You know,
Yeah.
it's very essential.
Yeah, and he puts exclamation part on his um, boat control. I mean, of course you never really fish by him so much because he goes so fast.
Yeah,
I mean, he's passed me 3 times in 100 yards, and he's covered a half mile each trip. I mean, he flat covers some water,
yeah.
and but I mean, when you see him stop that boat, that fish is coming in.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, you don't see him swinging his pole left and right trying to get on the fish like the rest of us are. I mean, he drops it,
no,
he's on it, he catches it,
yeah.
and
It's unreal.
yeah.
I mean, that's why he wins all these tournaments, right?
You're
So,
exactly right. He covers twice the water everybody else does and catches the fish he comes across. So if you can do that, you're going to do really good.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, what we do on this podcast is we always want you to, announce your sponsors and go ahead, go
Okay.
ahead and announce them.
H&H Rod and Reels. I'm real big on using the War Pig. It's a really good rod. That's Frank Heideshack Signature Series. Dub L seats. For my seats, that's really nice, especially with two people in the front of the boat. Beat Down Outdoors, that's the best electronics mounts that you can put on your boat, in my opinion.
Agreed.
K9 line, I love their 9-weave braid 25-pound line. They got some really good fluorocarbon as well. Let's see. Pro Tough Baits and Bombas Jig Company, which are both my companies. And I've got EMC Square Test and Balance, which is a local test and balance company here out of Topeka, Kansas. Council Grove Marina, Crappie Monster dip nets. That's all I use is their telescoping net. It's really nice.
Yeah, and that's called the Outlaw, correct?
Yes, that's the Outlaw. And you can't go wrong with that net. It locks solid. It won't spin when you put fish in it. You
Yeah.
can't complain about it. Trying to think what some other ones are. Crappie stopper jigs. Let's see, Heartland Jerky. Good friend of mine here, local. He keeps me loaded up on jerky when I go out on tournaments. So that's kind of nice to have the food for eating. And
Absolutely.
now
You can't beat it without you can't go to a fishing tournament without jerky, man.
no, and if you've seen the price of Snickers, you'll know why I'm eating jerky. Those things are getting expensive.
Yeah,
So
exactly. You want to show a couple bags of your baits and your jigs if you want, because uh, listeners, I use them every day. So he's got
like
great jigs, great baits.
like right here is sickle hooks that I've got. I'm going to go here in the right spot. That's a 1/0 hook in them, the 1/4 ounce head. I've got all different sizes. I don't put eyes on them. There's other guys that do, so I've just kind of veered away from that. I'm going to pick this up here.
Sure, go ahead, man.
Let's see. This is a Striker XL. This one I've really been using. This 1 3/4 inch with a straight tail. And this one I've really been doing good with last year and this year alone. And then see if I get over here. Grab a few of these off of here.
Yeah, that's a great color combination. That in Iowa, that color is killer. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, it's pretty good color no matter where you're at. And then, here's one of my favorite monkey milk and chartreuse. This is a 2-inch striker I've got. It's more of a smaller, thinner body,
Yeah.
which, I'll use this one and that 1 3/4 real religious once the shad hatch. That's about the only two sizes I'm going to use.
Yeah.
Then here I've got the original 2.5-inch striker, which it's a really good bait, and it's got a solid body. And, I use real tough plastic. I've caught over 100 fish per bait on these. They're some pretty tough rubber.
I hope you heard that. How many fish did you catch with one bait?
I've caught over 100 fish with one bait.
Yep.
And they're the nice part about the bigger one, you bite a little bit off, and that's using wire keepers. And even before wire keepers, I was using them before I bought Pro Tough, and we was catching 45, 50 with lead keepers, and that was stretching them out and making them loose. So that's pretty impressive. And when I bought the company, I have not changed the plastic. I'm using the same plastic, same hardness, everything, just that way. A person, when they buy a pack of jigs, they can go catch a bunch of crappie. It's not like some of the other ones that are softer plastic.
Yeah.
But the softer plastic has its place. Don't get me wrong. I've got some of that in my boat.
Oh yeah.
There's a day that them fish don't want that harder one, but you can catch a lot of fish on these.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I use his baits. I use his jigs. I use his jigs every day. It's great jigs. They're the best thing about them is when you're chasing those big fish, like especially in Grenada or even Red Rock in Iowa, I use that 1/0 hook, and I'm telling you what, that sucker does not disappoint. So, because those big ones, you got to have that bigger hook, because I feel, in my opinion, if I didn't have that hook, I would have lost that fish. I would say at least maybe 1 out of 5 times for sure.
Yeah. Well,
So,
now I'm doing like a 16th ounce with a number 4 steelhead and a
yeah.
16th ounce sickle. You know, that steelhead hook's pretty tough. I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
used this past weekend with that number 4 with them little 1 3/4 baits. Normally I'll size them with a number 2 or a number 4.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, again, thanks Cliff for coming on, and definitely, watch him on the Crappie Masters Elite. He fishes Crappie Masters, he fishes NCL. Definitely check him out, guys. He's definitely a sleeper. You will definitely see him cast checks, I guarantee it. Unless Hayden is fishing, he'll probably get first, right?
There's if I was to bet money and Hayden shows up to a tournament, I'd have to put it on him.
That's why they call him the bully, right?
That's right. He pretty well making his way right now, and I
Oh,
mean
absolutely.
but he's putting the effort in.
Yeah, he is.
He's doing the stuff that a lot of us guys that work for a living can't do.
Yep.
And he's really impressive. I mean, it's impressive to watch fish on the water. I mean, I've had days I just watched him in amazement for 10 minutes. I'm not even fishing. I'm just
I
watching
know.
him. I mean, it's like, wow.
Yeah, I did that when I was pre-fishing for Grenada last year. I was in awe. I'd say he did a 180 one time and then caught the fish. And I go, holy crap, he did that in like 3 seconds. How in the
Yeah.
world does he do that? And I'm like, I actually asked him, I said, how many trolling motors you got on the front? Like 4? And he just laughed at me, he's just like, oh no, it just takes time in the water, it's like, holy crap, man. That's a different level.
Yeah, I mean, he runs his trolling motor on 10. I mean, if I did that, I'd rip it off the boat. I mean, there's just no way. My reaction time's nothing to what these younger guys are. So I mean, I run 1.5, 1 3/4 mile an hour in open water.
Yeah.
You get me in the timber, I'm down 1.25 miles. I mean, I'm going slow enough that I can duck and dodge the trees, not hit the trolling motor. And I mean, he's going through them trees just like he would open water. I mean, he knows one speed, and that's wide open.
Absolutely.
But I'm telling you, he is paying for him. I mean, he's covering the water and seeing more fish than everybody else is.
Yep, absolutely. Well, again, thanks, Cliff. Again, definitely subscribe, like our page, share this video, and I appreciate you guys watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.